and because it kind of sums up, my crazy ideas and stuff. So, so if you hear some disagreement, that doesn't mean anybody's necessarily wrong, or it might be. I also want to tell you that this is kind of a trial run. We may open this up to a much bigger webinar where we're not going to go 15 minutes, but maybe go 45 minutes a piece, and really make this thing big. So if any of you think this content has been good, we would love it if you would say something about it on social media or something, so that we can maybe do something really big in a week or two. So my talk was about 45 minutes, and this morning I had to cut it down to 15. So let's go here. Let the game be the hardest thing you do. I know that's counterintuitive, but I think that I believe it strongly. It's very difficult for football coaches to accept this less is more approach. We have grown up in the religion of football, the grind, the pain, the sore as hell, all that kind of stuff. So it's very difficult for us. And I think it's even more difficult for us because we were the type of athlete that would come early, stay late, that would work their ass off. They love their coach, all those things. And I think it's really difficult for us sometimes to coach that cat, that guy that's a natural athlete and doesn't have to grind to get good. So I'm going to ask the question here: what wins games? Now, we could all talk about this, but I like to go back to the art of war, where, and of course football is kind of like war, where power, speed, and misdirection wins the war. So let's talk about power in football. I believe that power, you'd have to give football an A+ in the pursuit of power. The weight room is something that is the church of football. However, you need to counterbalance that with stuff like this. Craig James played for my son and ran hurdles for my son at Edwardsville High School, and he started a few games this year for the Eagles. And he was given some advice to an Edwardsville football player this spring, and he said, "Don't let them take away your speed. As soon as you get there, they will try to pack on the weight, and you'll live in the weight room." And then this is the saddest thing of all. I've never been as fast as I was in high school. So this is a guy that played at the University of Minnesota, and then he transferred to SIU and played, and now he's in the NFL. And so sometimes the power thing is a little scary. If you have too much power, you may create too much size, and size is the antagonist of speed. That the heavier, the more heavy you are, the more gravity pulls down on you, and the slower you'll be. The misdirection part of winning, I think I'd have to give coaches an A+. Coaches, the football coaches are hardest working people I know. They scheme, and they're pass routes, and blah, blah, blah. They are constantly going in with a game plan that probably is way too complicated. As a matter of fact, football coaches make this mistake all the time, that if you have too much sophisticated complexity, your players will not play fast. But going back, those three things I originally said, power, football coaches are great at power and great at misdirection. Charlie Francis said, the more you think, the slower you act. The forebrain is slow and involves thinking. The hindbrain is fast and involves natural movement and reactions. Our goal as football coaches is to play as simply as possible so our players can play fast. In speed, I would give coaches kind of a mixed grade. I'd give them an A+ for the love of speed. Everybody wants fast players. For maintaining speed, probably a C-. The things we do really work against speed. And then for increasing speed, I would give you football coaches an F. Nobody gets faster during the season, with the possible exception of Brad Dixon's team. You'll hear more about that later. Now, we said that too much misdirection is a problem. Too much power is a problem. But is too much speed ever a problem? I think you know the answer there. It's not a problem because the faster you are, the more powerful you are. Speed amplifies power. Speed also amplifies your game plan, whether it's a blitz off the edge or a reverse, whatever it is, speed actually improves your misdirection. It's important to note that speed creates endurance. Now, this is hard for people to understand sometimes, but if you can run 23 miles an hour, you should be able to run 20 miles an hour 1,000 times. So in a way, the faster you are, the more endurance you have. And you got to be careful though, because whenever you're working on endurance, like these guys, they're doing the slow shuffle of endurance training, endurance actually discourages speed. I kind of like this as well. If you train 100 miles an hour, 80 miles an hour feels comfortable. That's that speed reserve thing. Too many teams, I think almost all football teams, 90-some%, train at 60 miles an hour and then tries to play games at 80. What I would suggest to football players or football coaches is that you actually want to train in practice at a hyper speed, at a speed greater than game speed. This is also interesting. Speed creates speed capacity, but speed capacity does not improve speed. But now what do I mean there? I mean, kind of like what I just said earlier. If you can run, let's say, a 4.540, you should be able to run 100 4.740s. However, if you do 100 40s as your workout, you are not getting faster. So it's very important to improve your pure speed in the off season. So if speed is king, how do you prioritize speed? This is where my talk is really going to kind of hurry through and will be greatly expanded the next time we do this. So I say often that speed grows like a tree. So you really need to plant it as early as possible. The idea that you could start doing speed training with freshmen in their sophomore or before they're even freshmen, in the summer of the year before they're a freshman, you're actually doing speed training all summer. And then you're doing it again with them in the winter. And then you get at least your skilled athletes out for track. The idea that they could go through 4 years of that summer season, fall season, winter season, and track season is really powerful. Stop doing shit that makes you slow. I don't know how to say this any better. I worked on this slide, but I think that football coaches constantly do shit that makes their kids slow. You need to find the minimum effective dose. And what does that mean? That means instead of running a damn play 10 times, you ask your team for 1 perfect rep. Instead of a wide receiver doing 100 routes, you do 10 great routes. You don't fill time. I hate the word fill. You know, if you say we're going to practice 2 hours, you automatically start filling that 2 hours. You would love to get that practice done in 1:45. Moderate exercise never leads to high performance. This is just so important. As soon as you say we are going to practice less, you will practice with more intensity. And I think it's a mindset that's very difficult in the football world. This is probably the hardest thing, is that football is a sport that's very choppy. Guys stand around a lot. And so to practice, what do coaches do? They run from drill to drill, and, you know, it's like constant motion. You know, if guys are over on the sideline, heck, they're maybe doing up downs or something, they are just constantly moving. But what you have to do to prioritize speed is to actually say loitering is going to be a part of our practice. We're going to stand around some. We will recover. Practice will look like performance. To do this, I think to prioritize, you got to do what Bill Bowerman, the track coach at Oregon, said. He talked about hard, easy all the time, that moderate exercise never creates world records. So an easy practice sets up a hard practice. Now, what I would like to say, now he was a distance coach, basically. I like to call it high-low, that a low sprint practice is going to set up a high sprint practice. What do most coaches do? Well, by God, we're going to go high, 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 effort, 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 effort. And because of that, it's moderate, 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 moderate. So a weekly plan, there can be any type of weekly plan, but just to say how, why I would do this. You're fresh on Monday, so let's go fast. Let's have a setup day on Tuesday where we are not trying to go at top speeds. We're still blocking and tackling. We're still meshing in the background, things like that, in the backfield, things like that. But we are not trying to run high-speed routes. We're not finishing plays. And the reason why we're not is because we want to have another fantastic practice on Wednesday. And then we're going to recover, and then we have a game. And Saturday, Sunday is really important. I'm a huge believer that kids should sleep in on Saturday and, you know, wake up to college game day and have a weekend off. And that weekend off is going to be so important to restart the cycle. And I think this is the typical coach, parent, teacher, all those things, where they just want to be great at everything and they want to push people in every direction. And instead of 8 arrows, you need to be thinking about what your most important arrow is. And that's kind of goes back to what wins football games. And I would say that that your priority should be speed. So, are there any questions? Man, I did not go over. I'm so proud. Brad, are there any questions that have popped up?
No questions yet. Does anyone have questions for Tony specifically? You can ask them in the chat. Or as you think about them, we can do them at the end.
Yeah, we just roll on.
All right. I'm going to stop sharing. Or Tony, you can stop share if you want. And next up will be Kurt.
Did I do it?
Yep.
Good. All right. On the clock, like the draft day. All right. I'm going to start by the way I'm looking at the situation we're in right now. I'm not going to give you like a blocked out plan where I tell you do this many reps, do this many sets, do this on this day, do that on that day, because this situation is something that we're definitely not used to. We don't know how much time we're going to have when we come back at the college level, at the high school level, at the pro level. We might have 4 weeks. We might have 6 weeks. We might not have, we might not have a season. So I'm going to speak more in the generalities than I am of giving you a set plan. And I really do believe this. I told our coaching staff this morning, that what we're doing now is what our future is. The plan that we have set in place, what we're doing with our athletes while they're at home is what's going to facilitate what kind of season that we are going to have. And if you sit home where I think most strength coaches in the country were worried about strength, oh my God, my guys don't have a weight room. What am I going to do? How am I going to write workouts? And my point of emphasis when our guys went home were speed and recovery workouts. So basically I sent them home with a high-low workout where I microdose speed on a high-intensity day. It came back and did some recovery tempo-type runs the next day, and microdose speed again. It was high-low, high-low, high-low with the weekend off. And because with a field, you can do anything. You don't need weights. You don't need a rack. You don't need all this equipment. Sprinting is strength work, period. Plyometrics is strength work. So we have some guys with weight rooms. I sent them home with a plan. We have some guys that have a few dumbbells and some bands. I sent them home with a plan. We had some guys with nothing. But the one thing that they can have is access to a field. And so my point of emphasis was, let's get faster. Let's do workouts to facilitate that speed, not as far as conditioning wise, not to bump up volume, and let's get healthy. So if my guys come back and they work the plan, I don't care if I have 6 weeks, 4 weeks, or 2 weeks. We'll be fine. Basically we're going to have to set a plan together for what is giving to us that's going to be allowed by whatever high school association you're with, or with NCAA, or if you're in the NFL. So that's kind of the start. That's kind of taking that step backwards to make sure you probably have another 6 weeks to 8 weeks that you can work with your athletes right now to set a really good plan in place so that they come back ready to go, so that you don't feel like that you're under pressure to catch up. You're not going to catch up. You're not going to catch up with all the, to the weight room time that you've already missed. You're not going to catch up to the conditioning that you've missed. You're not going to catch up to the culture building that you've missed. It's a misnomer. It's not going to happen. So forget about catching up. Figure out what you can do to progress your athletes safely. So going through the energy systems, and this is one of, Tony's just hit upon a lot of it. We tend to, as strength coaches, as football coaches, live in that middle ground where we live in that glycolytic system, because football coaches want stuff hard. They want 300-yard shuttles. They want 110s. They want gassers. They want mat drills. Well, when you live in that no man's land, you're doing a disservice to your athletes and to your team. So that what happens is that it inhibits staying in the glycolytic system, especially for long durations of week after week. It inhibits your power. It inhibits your strength. It inhibits your speed. So why would you want to live there? Why would you want to live in that system? Because basically your aerobic system is going to facilitate your speed levels. So with your speed reserve, if my athletes, if they continually get faster, like Tony said, your 60, 70, 80% capacity during low-level conditioning and tempo bouts is going to be at a higher level. So you decrease your speed, you're also decreasing your work capacity, at different levels. So if you can keep your speed up, and you want a condition to facilitate the speed, not to take away from it. So glycolytic training is going to take away from that speed because you're never going to recover from it. You're never even in remotely the same system that you're playing in, not even close. So to use the adage of coach as well, it needs to be tough so that we're building our culture, we're building mental toughness. Mental toughness is how you approach everything you do that day. It is not the workout itself. It's how you approach the workout. You can make any workout mentally tough. You can make a speed workout mentally tough if the standard is really high. So the standard is the toughness, not the workout itself. That's how I view it. Now, I've had a lot of coaches argue with me in different clinics that mat drills and shuttles, that made our team. That made, that we were tougher in the fourth quarter. Well, that's great, but you're also slower in the fourth quarter and the third quarter and the second quarter and the first quarter. I'd rather be really fast in the first quarter and score 50, and then I can sit everybody on the bench and we win the game, and we don't even have to worry about getting to the fourth quarter. That's kind of how I look at it. It's how we've always looked at it. So being in that glycolytic system, I'm never going to convince 90% of the football coaches and street coaches in the country to get out of it, because that's, they're going to use the excuse of it being really tough and hard. I'd rather keep my athletes fast. I'd rather keep them healthy, and I'd rather win games. The culture you build has nothing to do with training mat drills or training 300s or gassers, period. So, I think that's like the biggest fight in my field is getting out of that toughness-based culture. I'd rather have my team healthy. And so getting out of that system in training is paramount, in order to maintain speed. Speed is the ultimate goal. Anything you do from a conditioning standpoint has to facilitate speed. So instead of worrying about staying in that system, I look at the whole problem as a holistic problem, and by position and by system that you run. So if you're a spread offense, your players are probably going to have to run at least 80 plays a game. All right. So if you're in a pro style offense, it's more down towards that 60 rep range. Whatever conference you play in, we play in a purely spread offense conference. So our players, and we don't have backups, so our starters play 80 reps. They don't come out. I have to get them ready for 80 reps. If you look at the time spent on the field, I mean, 6 play drives, 25 to 35 seconds between plays. Sometimes if you're going up tempo, you might drop down to 17. You got 2 to 4 minutes between series. You're only running maybe 12 to 13 series a game. What does running 300 yards in 52 seconds have to do with that game scenario? So in conditioning, we do a lot of tempo type workouts, whether it's continuous tempo, extensive tempo, or intensive tempo. It depends on how I map out the training cycle. So earlier in the cycle, I'll do more extensive tempo, continuous and extensive tempo, and then I move more to extensive the closer we get to the season. But it's position specific type intensive work. So it's a lot of backpedaling and stepping over and cover skills, route running skills. With the defensive linemen, their game is usually a play is around 7 seconds. Theirs is probably around 3. So even on my tempo work, everything's scaled down for the linemen. So they're not going at the same yardages, they're not going to the same rep loads, and it's the same way with the speed work. My linemen aren't going to be doing the same rep loads that my skill guys are going to be doing in speed work, because a 300-pound body, it's a ton of energy expenditure, and they're, from a physiological standpoint, they're going to react and adapt completely different than a 180-pound corner. So there are a lot of things that you have to think about when putting your whole program together. And a lot of it is position. A lot of it is the type of offense or defense you run. And at the same time is you're going to have to, more importantly, is you're going to have to counteract what football coaches are going to want to do. And here's the way I kind of see it going into the season. We're going to have 4 weeks to get ready, and every strength coach and football coach is going to try to get every single thing done week 1 that they can. The body only has so much gas in the tank, and you only have so many hours in a day to recover from that energy expenditure, period. So if you're trying to get, I'm going to beat them to death in the weight room to get them stronger. I'm going to run them into the ground to get fat, to get up in better condition. I'm going to do speed work. I'm going to do COD and agility work. Then we're going to come back and we're going to do all our skill and 7-on-7 work. You're not going to have a team by week 2. It's not going to happen. And the pressure that the strength coach is going to feel from the football staff to get things done quickly is what's going to bury you, and it's going to cause you a losing season, and you're going to lose a lot of athletes. The more you can methodically plan out that, especially the first 2 weeks, and you're going to have to look at every rep and every instance that football is going to have a football-related rep. Where at every speed, you're going to have to account for how much time they're going to be on the field. You're going to have to account for how many, if it's 30 minutes of skill work, if it's 45 minutes of individual work, if it's 30 minutes of teamwork, you're going to have to account for every single rep, and you're going to have to use your eyes. You're going to have to look at each player, how they're responding, especially your DBs and receivers, because they're the ones that they're going to get a billion reps. Offensive coaches are going to go, run it again. So what you have planned and what you can actually do are 2 completely different things. And you're going to have to bet if you cannot adjust on the fly, not on a weekly basis, on a daily basis, from the time we get back to football related work through the end of the season. you're going to have a god awful season. You're going to have to account for every single thing that football does, and you're not going to get it all back in week one. It has to be progressive. Your strength work, an athlete can get strong in 2 weeks. I'm a firm. I've done it. It's not. I don't stress out about strength. I've not squatted athletes an entire football season, and my 600-pound squatters had 14 of them were 600-pound squatters in January after not squatting since August. So you can program around it. I've done it before, but we stayed healthy and we stayed fast. So and we won games. Some of the stuff that we've done, we're the only team in the nation that's won 6 straight bowl games. Straight. We're the only. In a group of 5. We've put more guys in the NFL in the last 7 years than any other group of 5 team. Our injury rates are down to very. I mean, we never had soft tissue injuries. We had 1 ACL at the end of the season in game 10, and we had 1 Liz Frank in game 9. So other than that, that's all we had the entire year. So I'm not trying to demean strength. I grew up in a U.S. Olympic weightlifting training center. Our guys are strong, but that's not my emphasis. My emphasis is on movement. Deceleration, acceleration is strength work. So right now, if you do your athletes a favor, is program as much of that as you can in, and worry about that more than the strength stuff, because guys they have different means of training right now. No one has some guys don't, no one has power racks. No one has bumper plates. No one has, a full weight room. We might have 5 guys on the team that have a weight room in their garage. So I'm programming around that. When you get back week 1, slow it down. Slow the game down. Slow it down as far as what you accomplish, the minimum of what you can that day as far as your rep load. So I'm looking at my first week is I'm going to microdose speed work. I'm going to do a lot of recovery TIPO stuff. I'm not going to spend, an exorbitant amount of time on the field in it. I'm going to do a lot of recovery modalities in between workouts, and I'm going to progress from that point on, depending on what is relegated by the football staff and what kind of rep load that they're going to utilize throughout the day and throughout the week. At day 1, I've already, talked to the head coach. We're going to come in. We're not going to run a conditioning test. You'll see in dynamic warm-up, day 1 when you get back, what kind of condition your team is. If you warm up 10 to 15 minutes, you'll see guys dying in the warm-up. You'll be able to evaluate just in the warm-up where your guys are as far as condition. So I'm going to run a normal TIPO day. It's going to be 20% of the volume that we would that I have them doing at home, and it's more just to see where we're at as a team. And from that point on, I told Coach Holtz that if we have guys that are coming in that are in poor shape, we're going to pull them out of the group, put them in their own group whenever we run, and keep the intensity lower so that the intensity can be higher with the guys that are already in shape. And just from a safety standpoint, another thing that we do that most people in the country don't do is when we condition on our TIPO days with our big athletes, we do it in the morning. I do it early when it's cool. They're big guys. They overheat. They overheat relatively quickly. And most people say, well, what about acclimatization to the heat? I live in Louisiana. It's 1,000 Africa hot. It's 1,000 degrees here. A lineman walking across an asphalt parking lot at 200 yards and it's 150 degrees on it, he's getting acclimated to the heat, easily. So I don't worry about acclimatization. That comes in time through practice. So we also take all of our sickle cell guys, all of our guys who've had exercise-induced asthma, our cardiac problems, and any player that we consider that's obese. And we put a red LeBron Terry Cloth headband around their head, and so that he's easily marked. So you can see him on the field at all times. We actually put them all on one side of the field with our best trainers on that side of the field, and they are, they are told to pull that athlete out if they see any signs of trouble. It's not worth to push a kid to his limits. It is not worth killing him. It is not worth your career. And his family has given you the opportunity to mentor their child. The last thing you want to do is end up hurting an athlete and losing that trust. So it's not worth it. So, I mean, people say, well, push them to the limit. It's got to, to get them ready for the season. No. If you look at what's happened in college football over the years, the amount of deaths that's happened in college football because of this bullshit mentality of more is more. We have to build all this mental toughness. And, you're putting guys either in the hospital or you're putting them into a funeral home. So, be careful in those respects because you're going to get pushed to your middle limits with football staffs. And you have to be smart and you have to be a fighter. I am not scared to lose my job. I will fight any day, every day for the health of my athletes, and I refuse to back down. Fire me over me having to live the rest of my life knowing that I put someone in the grave. And it's not going to happen. And I'm very adamant about it. I've been very vocal about it in the last couple of years. So that's kind of where I'm coming from as far as getting your guys ready and being safe. You can get it done, but it's going to have to be aggressive and it has to be smart. So there's a lot of things that we do by position. I don't train the linemen like we train our skill guys. We do a lot of pushing workouts, a lot of grappling with my O and D line because that's what they're doing on the field, and we do it in a tempo style workout. So athletes are they are down in the trenches are pushing and pulling against each other the entire time. That's where their condition base needs to be from, and you need to condition at angles. There's a lot of curve running we do. There's a lot of position specific conditioning we do. There's a lot of reaction based agility work we do in conditioning. But it's quality work. It's quality. It's quality reps. It's that takes precedence over the volume. So dang it, I went 20 minutes and 56 seconds. So I'll stop right there.
Kurt, you do have a question on what do your different tempo workouts look like? Okay,
so continuous is going to be lower. It's going to be lower intensity, and so if you take a football field and and say I just have my skill guys, all right, so they might stride down the sideline 60 yards, walk across the field, stride down the other sideline 60 yards, jog across the other side of the field. So they might do that continuous, up to 18 minutes. All right, so that's a continuous, between a 60 and 80% intensity when they're striding. All right, so then if you're going, with extensive stuff, then my tempo is going to be a little bit faster, and I'll set up my distances. Like my linemen are only going to go 30 yards. My mids are going somewhere between 40 and 50, and my DBs and receivers are going between 50 and 60 yards. And we're trying to stay at a relaxed state, and we go more on a rep schedule. Then when we go more of the intensive stuff, it's going to be position specific. So that's more of the lineman pushing 300-pound sleds at 5 yards, doing some grappling against another lineman We do some grappling dynamically and isometrically because that's kind of what the game is about. So there we have some 50-pound steel bars, and they'll be pushing against each other, moving their feet dynamically. And sometimes certain reps will do isometrically where they just stalemate and push against each other and try to drive their feet through the ground, try to stay stabilized and just push isometrically. Because a lot of times locked in, that's where they're at, and that's where they lose their power. Then with the more of the skill guys, it's more our DBs and receivers, they'll actually cover each other. And, the receivers will call out a route. The receivers will run it. The DBs will cover them, but it's not like they're not pressing, not jamming. It's just covering them, flipping their hips, staying in movement with them, just as a reaction there, as a reaction, and the receiver kind of trying to break his route off, depending on what the DB is giving them, and it's more quality of reps at between 80 and 90%, but it's quick and it's done, and we're out. We do one drill where even with the linemen, and where we'll do a reaction drill, like a mirror drill, where they face each other. They'll mirror each other for the linemen only go 3 to 4 seconds. The skill guys go 5 to 7 seconds. Then they have like the skill guys will jog from 20 to 20. So they're lined up on the 20 facing each other, and they'll mirror for 5 to 7 seconds, jog all the way to the other 20, rest 25 seconds, mirror each other, and jog back. And we do some intensive conditioning that way, and with all three groups. But the linemen only go from the 20 to the 50, so they're going 20 to 50, where everybody else is going 20 to 20 on the jog recovery. So that's just a few of the things. If you just research continuous tempo, extensive tempo, and intensive tempo, and just gear it towards the demands of the game itself and the movement skills of the game itself. So you're going to have to come up. Every team is going to be completely different. So the things that your team has been exposed to, the things that your football coaches are going to expose to them, how many hours a day you have to train. There's so many different variables to put together a program. That's why I stay in generalities instead of saying do this exactly, because what I can do is not what you can do, is not what somebody else can do. So that's why I stay so general. Hope that answered your question. Probably not, because I'll go all 100 different directions.
One more for you, Kurt. So when you mention conditioning for various position groups, is this a specified time where you're not focused necessarily on football skill, but instead on max intensity output? And is this an end of practice thing? No, this is in our training, and in our training block. It's scheduled in the system of training. Some of the skill stuff that I'll do, with the positioning coach it's real direct skill work after practice, because I work with our position coaches a lot, and things that they're having a problem with on the field, we'll get together with the position coach. The position coach will call me over and say, okay, Kurt, let's work with him on this aspect of his game that he's having problems with. But when I'm talking about, people want, you get mad when you say, sports specific, that it doesn't exist. Well, in football, yes, it does, because there are a lot of things that carry over. It might not be the game situation, but it's game-like. So if I'm conditioning where my receiver is running a route and my DB is covering him, that's sports specific. It's game-like. When two linemen, an offensive lineman and a defensive lineman, are grappling, so an offensive lineman has inside grip and a defensive lineman is trying to long arm him, and in a 5-second period where they're fighting each other, that's game-like. So a lot of the drill, I try to put the conditioning more game-like, and then we start adding some more, and if you're adding reaction to it, it's more game-like. So I don't know, Brad, did I answer the damn question? I don't even know. My mind goes 1,000 miles an hour in a million directions.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, just to put my 2 cents in, I was listening to Chris Korfist and Tony this weekend, and people want to debate strength work, speed work, all this. Think of it as exercise. So it's not, this is football, this is conditioning. You have a whole, I guess, area of how does everything fit in? Quit trying to break it into all these individual groups.
All these components.
Think of it as a whole. Yeah. I mean,
right.
What's the global load on this athlete?
It's got to be a holistic approach. It's not everybody wants to compartmentalize. Okay, I do my strength work, I do my plyometric work, I do my linear speed work, I do my velocity, and they compartmentalize everything. Well, in movement, that's not how it works. It's a concerted effort of movement that it's all at once. It's not like, okay, on this play I'm just going to be fast. Okay, no, on this play I'm going to be very agile. Okay, on this play I'm going to be strong. I'm going to be powerful. No, it's people want to compartmentalize, make it simple. Well, movement is not. It is very complex, and our training, we don't do enough strength work, really, to me, in movement. I think there's this gap, like especially when, I love Triphasic, I love Dietz, I love everything he's about, but I think there's this gap of when you're doing like eccentric and isometric, because we've all grew up doing concentric work our entire lives. But there's this gap of eccentric and isometric work that goes to the field. So it's like, okay, we're doing this eccentric and isometric work in the weight room, but then there's not a loaded eccentric or isometric work, a lot of times deceleration and stopping isometrically on the field to get to free movement of eccentric and isometric work of deceleration and stopping and acceleration. So I think the thing I've kind of played around with, like Tony said, don't be scared to be wrong or screw up, and I've been wrong 99% of my life, is doing some loaded work, acceleration, deceleration, stopping wise with weighted vests or weighted belts, and bands in different movement patterns that they're going to see on the field, but doing it very limited and the rep loads very limited, but the movement mechanics are beyond trying to get them perfect, and then moving to free movement unloaded. And I think that middle progression has kind of helped us. And what you got to look at too is everything you do from lifting to dynamic warm-ups to speed work to conditioning to your plyometrics, all that has a conditioning effect. When you look at the whole global picture, the body is getting conditioned higher and higher each week anyway. You can't just look at your conditioning as, oh, I'm conditioning and I got to get more volume in, because you got to look at all the other things that are affecting that conditioning level that's getting, because your GPP is just going up each week. So you got to look at being careful to not suck all the gas out of the tank, even as you progress week to week. People think, well, if I did 4 sprints week 1, I got to do 6 or 8 sprints week 2. No, it's just the quality of work and the speed of the work. And so if you got 8 sprints week 2 but they're at slower times, you've done a disservice to your athletes. If you keep bumping up the volume of your conditioning and your athletes are getting slower on your high intensity days, you're doing a disservice to your athletes. I may be wrong because I'm just a Cajun from the swamp who drinks too much.
All right, I think that's good there. Like I said, if you come up with more questions, you can ask them at the end. I'm going to go ahead about a little bit about how we take this to the high school level. We are a small school. Everyone see that all right? Tony, you guys got that? Okay. So we're a small school. I mean, I get anywhere. This year we had 42 athletes. We've had as much as 60. We play at the 1A level. So obviously from a perspective of talent and athletes, we don't have an abundance. And I know most of you don't have subs either, but we really don't. We get down into freshmen and sophomores pretty dang quick if we're going to beat up our guys and get them injured and so forth. And that makes this obviously nothing work if you don't have your dudes out there. So this picture at the start was from our first round playoff game. and that's our all-state sprinter, all-state running back. And they had no answer, and we were up 40 to nothing in the first half, and took a knee before we went in to score. So we didn't score because we were faster at week 10, and not because we beat them up. We gave our guys 4 days off in a row: Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, when the playoffs started, so that we could go out and play lights out on Friday. So that's kind of the basis of what I'm going to talk about. If it'll progress here, I hope. Okay. So our schedule, I'm going to start with the weekend, and Tony talked about some of this. So some of this is going to piggyback off what Tony said. We rest. And I know one of the questions earlier was, we bring our guys in so they don't get in trouble. I used to think that way too. But if that's the mindset that I'm bringing guys in so they don't get in trouble, then that's not really what's best for the athlete from an athletic performance standpoint. And you have you're trying to merge a character issue and a responsibility issue with an athletic performance, and those don't mix. And Kurt's talking about how he conditions guys different. I used to condition my whole team based upon our worst athletes. And so I would destroy our best athletes because our slowest and weakest guys weren't very good. And I thought that we needed to get them better, and I would put everyone through the same thing. So if you're a dude that goes out and runs the ball 35 times on a Friday night and is beat up, gave you everything he had, is a great student, great character, and you're asking him to get up at 7 a.m. and come in because of a few other guys on your team, then you need to change your thinking, in my opinion. That rest that they get on Saturday and Sunday, and they get to enjoy college football and watch film at their own leisure, is going to set your whole week up a lot better than if you start right off the bat on Saturday. I mean, we have 2-hour road trips. So there are times we don't get home till midnight, and then they probably get some food. And by the time I get down from a game, it's 2 a.m., 3 a.m., something like that. And so we don't do that. As far as we don't give them a huge packet, I know some people give them all this stuff to look at on film. And Tony talked about paralysis. If we have to think about everything, we're going to play slow. So we don't give our guys tons and tons of stuff to watch. They understand the techniques that we give them. If I'm an inside linebacker, these are my reads. This is what I'm looking at. What is the guard doing? And in that's what I'm focused on in film. What are their best few plays? I need to understand that. And what are my keys? I don't need to know all of these other things and watch hours and hours of film and come up with these, bring in these huge packets of information back to the coaches on Monday. Because you know how it is. Whenever you force them to do something like that, they're going to call their buddies. They're going to write down whatever just to appease you, and it's not doing what you want it to do. So when you give them that time off and you say, hey, this is what you need to be ready, and you give them the ownership, and as Tony says, let them build their own house, they're going to be more prepared on Monday than if you tell them they have to do X, Y, Z, and all these different things. And if they don't, they're going to go out and condition and all this stuff. You're setting yourself up for a bad week. And from a coaching standpoint, I'm not going to get into all this and this. We don't meet on the weekends either. And I know that sounds crazy to some of you. Some of you are learning, though, how much you can use this technology. The way I look at this scenario that we're currently in is I hope it changes coaches' mindsets on how much time they have to spend in meetings and in the office. Because for really 3 or 4 or 5 years, we've been doing our meetings virtual. We've been putting stuff onto Google Drive. We've been spending times with our family. We've been carving out time on our individual, whether that's late at night, early morning while the kids are sleeping, those types of things that we can get our work done. And I think that rejuvenates your coaching staff. It rejuvenates their spouses, and it allows those coaches to be a lot more fresh going into the week when we do that way. So we get the weekend off in terms of physically meeting, and we still get our work in, and it's on Drive, and we're sharing that stuff out on Sunday night as far as the game plan. So that's how our week starts. And we try to enjoy some college football and some NFL if we can. As far as our practice schedules, people ask, what's a sprint day look like? Well, I'm fortunate to be the head track coach, head football coach, and the strength conditioning coach at my school. So I essentially have it all. So if they're screwed up, it's my fault. I've got no one else to blame. I don't have, like Kurt's got to always be fighting the sport coaches and things like that. I am the sport coach. I am the strength coach. So I'm fortunate to have most of my athletes throughout the day in my class, and Monday, like Tony talked about, when we're rested, we've had Saturday, Sunday off. That's a sprint day for us. So from a varsity perspective, we're going to run 40s, we're going to run fly 10s, something like that. And they're going to do that in my class already during the day. So they're already going to get that sprint work in. Our young kids, they'll also sprint because, our freshmen and sophomores, they're generally not running fast enough that they can run 3 fly 10s on Monday morning, and they're fine to play on Monday night's game. In the past, though, we used to play them on Monday night's game and then turn around on Tuesday and put them in full pads and make them the scout team. So you shouldn't be scared to sprint them on Monday and then have them play Friday or Monday night. If you were okay with them playing a game on Monday, full padding them on Tuesday, and have them go against your varsity in back-to-back nights like we all did. I did the same thing. So when we get to after school, we film and game plan. So we do it in short bursts. We give an overview maybe of our game, because we've already shared certain things over the weekend. I'll send certain things to my players, especially if they consistently are doing something incorrectly. I may say, hey, through huddle, I may say, go watch plays 22, 26, and 28. You're misreading the guard. You keep missing him taking that pull step, and you're taking too many false steps. And I don't need them to watch the whole dang game, because a lot of plays, like how many of you grade the guy on the backside time and time again when it's a hitch route to the left, but you go through film and you grade and you give him a plus because he did what he was supposed to do? That's a waste of time, in my opinion. He needs to know, and if he did it well, hey, look what you did on plays 8, 13, and 19. See how you finally got over that guard and you got downhill and met that fullback right in the gap. That was perfect. And give them those things. And when you tell them those specific things, they'll go watch it. And they say, yeah, yes, coach, I understand that. We do the same thing with practice. So that's how we put things in specific, because you just tell them to watch the game. They're going to watch the game. They're going to watch the best player. They're going to say, oh, hey, look, did you guys see where this guy fell down on this play? Ha, 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 or this guy got pancaked. They're not watching it in terms of performance unless you give them some specific things. And then we break out individually. If there's some things that maybe we're adding, as Kurt talked about, we'll add things in. What we are week 9 and 10 is not what we were week 1. We're a double wing T team, and we have a base set of 6 or 8 plays that we run really well. It equates to the 80-20 principle. It's about 20% of our offense in terms of total play calls, but it equals about 80% of what we do in terms of yardage production. So we focus on that. And then we'll do RPR. And again, I could talk about RPR for a long time too. There's tons of podcasts out there. There's tons of videos. There's online. But we do that as a team. And then those guys that were not in my class, and the guys that were in my class, a lot of times we'll go back through our sprint mechanics or our speed drills. And then if you already ran for me, then you don't have to run again. So sometimes that's 2 guys, sometimes it's 3, sometimes it's none. Sometimes I've got all my varsity football players in my class, and we go home. And so you take Saturday off, you take Sunday off. Monday is a sprint day, and we don't go to the field, and we don't put in all these different schemes. And hey, we think these 5 plays that we're going to create out of thin air. I watched this on Saturday. Alabama ran this awesome version of something we already do. Let's put it in. And we spend all Monday putting all this stuff in for the next week instead of letting them go home, get that extra day of recovery so you can come back on Tuesday and have a good practice instead of trying to crowd their brains with all this new stuff that you think is going to work for this specific opponent. Because in my opinion, when it's 4th and 2 on the 2-yard line and you're down by 4 points, something tells me you're not going to go to that play you worked on a couple times on Monday. It was okay during the week. You're going to go back to whoever your best player is behind your best guys, and that's what you're going to run. And it should be the play that you've worked on and that is going to work more times than not something that you created on Monday. So we don't take the field. We don't. And when the playoffs start and we have a Saturday game, Monday is also a recovery day. So we don't even we let the kids go home on Monday, which is crazy for most people to think because it's playoffs, right? And if it's playoffs, we got to do a whole bunch more. No, by that point in the season, you should your practice should be super short, and you should be getting better and even more better at the things that you've already got in. So when Tuesday rolls around, this is when people talked about high-low days or sprint, non-sprint day. This is a non-sprint day for us. So we're not going to pad up even. We're helmets only because our philosophy is we want to build towards Friday. Okay. And my old philosophy was we brought them in on Saturday. Sometimes we ran them. Sometimes we lifted them. We watched film. We gave them Sunday off. Monday, we conditioned the hell out of them with gassers and all kinds of stuff, right? So we destroyed them Monday. We came back on Tuesday in full pads. Now our JV came back after playing Monday night. We beat the shit out of them. And that was Tuesday. And then we came back on Wednesday because it's another pad day. We beat the shit out of them, backed off a little on Thursday. And then we were pissed when they weren't playing lights out on Friday. Well, if Friday's the biggest night that you have, why are you expecting Tuesday to be that in practice? And too many coaches, and I was one of those, I wanted to make Tuesday like Friday because I thought the harder we went on Tuesday, the easier Friday would be. And I don't believe that. I think you've got to make, like Tony said, you got to be willing to make Friday the hardest thing that you do. What can you do in helmets? Well, what do you do in the summer when you can't put pads on? You work on your fundamentals. You work on blocking, tackling, different run schemes. You work on, your special team stuff. If you've got certain punt fakes or we're a swinging gate team. So those are times that we can do all that stuff when we're not in pads. We work on getting the ball out. You can work takeaway stations without pads on. We do 7-on-7 all summer in Illinois anyway, with only helmets on. So you can add that in there. We go against bags. So we have guys hold hand shields. And so we can work and we film as much as we can. So we work against hand shields and you'll see that it isn't perfect, but we're seeing that our guys are stepping the right way, that our backfield action is correct. We're saving the wear and tear in our guys because we're not beating them. And I'll ask you this question. How good is your scout team? If you're at my level, how good is your scout team? How much better is your scout team than a freaking bag in reality? They're not, right? Most of them go hard about 1 out of 5 plays. So the guy across from them gets to be lazy because, that guy he's going against is not, every third play and when the coach gets after him. But when we teach our guys how to move bags and we expect our guys to move those bags and if you're a double team and all those different things, and that's what we're looking for. And then we do all of our other stuff in our individual time. I think coaches want 30 minutes a team and all that stuff. Again, how good are those team sessions going to be compared to how good maybe you can go in a group session or a half line session or in your own individual work. And we do the same thing on team defense. We limit our team defensive reps. I bet our ones on average get 10 team D reps a week, which flips people out. There's a lot of times on Thursday I don't give them any because I want them pissed off. My number one defense is always going to kick the shit out of my scout team. Always. Because they're better. They're my fastest dudes. They fly around. And so I don't need to see that all week long. I need to see that they understand and recognize these plays and where they need to fit. And we do that with bags on Tuesday. Ooh, there we go. So there's our practice schedule. And you can just kind of see it. I know it's kind of small. So we may start with a punt team situation, right? And then we'll go into our individual time. So in this individual time, we're in helmets. We're doing run versus pass reads. So our outside linebackers would be reading their keys. Our inside linebackers would be reading their keys, and we're working that. We're working that side of it. And then this was a team that was downhill in the eye. So we worked on how we were taking the lead on. And then one of our techniques, our DBs are doing, like, Kurt's saying, they're doing those drills. And they're doing that. And then we give them breaks. Our position coaches, like, we have our guys carry jugs around. So at any point in the drill, we let them walk over there and get water. Like if they say, hey, in between this drill and that drill, then we let them get water. And when we let them get water, we let them get water. We don't say you got to sprint over there, get 2 sips and you got to sprint back, because how much better is the next period going to be? And then when we put those big breaks in there, we give them 5 minutes, and it's usually a transition between Indian group and team, something like that, offense and defense. We just say, go over there, sit down, drink water. And so if you walked up in our practice and you saw our whole team sitting around drinking water, you'd be like, what the hell are these guys doing? They're lazy as shit. No, they're not. We just had a 20-minute period where we did what we needed to do and got better. Now we're going to give them a break. And so when I ask our guys after the season, what do you like or what do you dislike about practice? They love the fact that they get those opportunities to then be able to come back to go hard, get a break, come back and go hard again. Kind of like football, right? Where we don't ask them to go out and play 60 straight minutes with no break like soccer. All right. And they appreciate that fact, and they come back that much harder. Instead of starting your practice, here's 100% in the gas tank, and by the end we're down to 0 because we just consistently did, whatever, go, let's go. If you're on the field, you better be running kind of shit, And then by the end of practice, by the time we get to the end, we're down to here. And then we're pissed that our last Team O session or our last Team D session sucks So then we add 15, 20 more plays on it. And now all we're doing is destroying the guys for the next day. And then we're pissed. And so then after practice, we've got to have a damn meeting. It says, guys, our effort is shit. This is, this and this. Well, let's go back to what was Saturday like. What was Sunday like? What was Monday? What was Tuesday? What have you done up to this point to put your guys in a position to be successful? And if you're like I used to be, every day destroyed them a little bit more. And then we just hope for the best on Friday night, no matter what the situation was. So here we are, just some video of us against Bags, and we teach our guys how to hold them. So we're going against another wing T team. So I can see alignment, I can see assignment, I can see all of those things without beating the shit out of each other. Okay, so we're just working on one of our inside blitzes there. Here we are working on a fake punt in the playoffs, right? I mean, that's something that we don't need to do in pads. We finally got it right. We threw it incomplete. Working on some guard trap stuff. So our guys are getting off the ball. We're asking them to block to the whistle. We can see their first step. Here we are in our jet play going against Bags. So we're still getting these team reps in. We're just doing it. And when we get the pads on, we do a little bit more in our indie time. We're working on this stuff. But we don't need to beat them up all day Tuesday for 30 plays of team offense and 20 plays of team defense, because I want Wednesday to be good. Because we've essentially kept them out of pads now from Friday night until Wednesday. So our Wednesdays are only full pad practice. I mean, you want to talk about getting a kid excited to come to practice, take away their ability to go full pads only one day a week. One of my players, probably like my highest character kid in his little exit thing, he was kind of pissed because he felt like he didn't get all the reps that he wanted or needed through the week. So it pissed him off. But he was 165 pounds, and he played guard and defensive end, and he did play all game long. He hardly ever came off the field. He's one of the few guys I've had that can play the same in the first quarter and the fourth quarter. And it pissed him off that he couldn't do that stuff all week in practice. But when we go full pads, we don't start with full pads. So we carry our pads out to practice. We just have our lowers on, and we do some type of sprint work. I like the idea. I haven't done, because I get them in my class. We haven't done fly 10s and some of that stuff on a Wednesday. But I really like the idea of doing the gauntlet stuff and getting all the football players around and running fly 10s. I think that's a great idea. And I think that's something that we're going to look to as a change up this year, to add that in. But we'll do like game specific sprint stuff. So we may do our kickoff team. We may time it. Who can get down there the fastest, those types of things. We may do kick return. Hey, we've got to catch this, and we got to block, and we got to score in 8 seconds, 9 seconds, 12, whatever it is. And our guys are doing those. And then we let them walk back. And we try to give them, talking about the work rest ratio. Like if I'm on the kickoff team, I might get, who knows, minute and a half in between, those types of things, depending by the time they get the ball in and change the chains and start the 40-second clock and all that kind of stuff. So we like to give them that rest instead of, you're going to sprint down and run kickoff. Then you got to jog back and then run another one. That's not game-like, right? How many times are you going to actually kick off that many times in a row and those types of things? And then we like to time our individual runs. So we'll bring the free lap out. I'll show you a video here in a second. So we'll set the free lap up, and we'll do like rocket toss runs or whatever. We'll see how our fastest guys are. We'll see how our fastest pullers are. Who's the fastest lineman that can get out on the edge, and we'll time them. We don't record that stuff. We yell those times out loud, and the guys compete. And then we do red zone in different situations. And we're going to try to, this year, we're going to build a lot more into that reverse engineering. For example, and my offensive coordinator kind of had this idea that we're going to run a period where we're going to get the ball. Let's say we get the ball on the 14, the 20-yard line, something like that. We're going to run 6 plays with a play clock in a game-type situation. And then we're going to get our 2-point. Then we're going to get that minute, and then we're going to come and kick an onside kick because we do a lot of crazy onside kicks. We're going to kick that. We're going to recover it, and then we're going to take a shot play because that's exactly something that we might do on a Friday night. And we're going to practice that way. We're not just going to line up on one damn line and run 25 plays over and over and over and over again because, this RPO that we like from that someone else ran against us or we saw on Saturday, we're not quite getting it right. We don't do that. So we limit. We may only have 5 offensive plays that day. We may only do 6. That might be our team session. We have 6 plays of our number ones on team offense on a Wednesday. And it'll be our best plays or it'll be our script plays, things like that. And like I said, so as the Panthers, we want to keep them caged up. You know, we want to take some of those opportunities away from them to go out instead of, oh man, I'm tired. I don't want my guys waking up on Friday. You know, we all have that, whatever, that fake juice, those screamers and yellers and all that bullshit. But that isn't going to save your central nervous system. You can scream and yell and and do all that shit and jumping jacks before the game and yell out your team. That doesn't matter 1 ounce to performance. And I'll talk about how we warm up. All right. Skip ahead, hopefully here. So that's what our sprint day, and I put those things in red. So this was a day when we did a lot of special teams. So I think the idea for you here is if you're going to do a sprint period or ask them to be high CNS and high intense, you need to follow that with some type of game plan or teaching period. So like when we did that kick return, and we're running 2 full speed kick return touchdowns. So we're kicking off when we're doing this on air, and our guys on the side would be catching it, and they're all acting like they're returners, and they're sprinting too. We follow that with our swinging gait. So because we've done that high CNS stuff, or we've sprinted, and we're doing this without pads, then we'll go into running all of our swinging gait stuff, or 5 minutes or 10 minutes, where it's very low intense. We're still getting something done. The other team's got to prepare for all this swinging gait stuff and what we might do. Heck, we're using it as a time. Or maybe it's a time you talk about a front adjustment, or it's a time that you talk about a shift or a trade that you're going to add in on offense. Something where you're doing more teaching while the guys recover. And I think that's hard for us to do because we want to go from one high CNS, high intense period to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. And by the end of practice, you know, nothing that you're doing is game-like. So then you end up like what Willie Taggart, and you do nothing but bitch and call your guys out because they're not in shape. Well, guess what? All you did all practice long was get your guys tired, and you never made them do anything at full speed. All right. And so I put those in red. And here's the other thing to give our coaches ownership. This is all on Google Drive. So our position coaches add in their thing. So if I want this to be a sprint period, I mark it red. And then my O-line coach comes in and he puts in what he wants to do. Of course, we talk about stuff all throughout the day, text all throughout the weekend. And that's what's nice about digital. We can shoot each other a group text and communicate while we're doing other things quickly without having to get together and sit in a room and talk. And then we do that, and then our individual guys groups. And here's the other thing. Like, we put times on there, but we always tell our guys, and same thing on Thursday, we treat this like a rolling track schedule. So if we had 10 minutes of TMO and we ran 5 badass plays and it only took us 6 minutes, then we're moving on to the next thing. And I post this. I think too many coaches, they want to hide the freaking practice plan because they put all this bullshit conditioning at the end that their players never see what the plan is. I post this in the locker room. Guys, we take care of business. We're out at this time. And this is, we're going a little bit later here. I think some of this stuff, the reason we had all that special teams is we have all these staff meetings and all this stuff. So as coaches, a lot of us probably didn't get on the field till 3:30 in this day, but we give them things to do on their own. I give our captains that stuff. But you do all this, like, we want our kids to know this is what we have in there, right? There's no conditioning at the end. We're not going to run 300-yard shuttles and all that shit at the end. And so they know when they get their job done, we're going to move on. So here's us timing. You can see a free lap timer right there. We're timing our game plan run here. I'm going to turn that volume down. And then we do it. So we're working on, how many times you run plays in a indie period or a group period that are slow as hell because you're not putting anything on it. So he's catching that. That was our all-stater with the mullet 2 years ago. And you can be as creative as possible. You can do it on a fly. You can do it on a vert. You can do all this stuff. You want to figure out who's the dude that we want to go one-on-one against a shitty corner. Who's our guy? Well, this dude is fast as hell. And then when he's running his vertical the fastest, well, then that next wide receiver's like, damn, he's running 2/10 faster than me. And then he's going to try even harder the next time. It might be the only 2 times in practice that receiver actually runs as hard as he can on a route, something that you're expecting him to do on Friday night. And then our Thursday, like I said, it's like a rolling track schedule, meaning, you run your 4x8 and then your 4x1, how you do what all those things and how that we do that in practice. So we'll do our kickoff team. Boom. We had 2 great kickoffs, or 2 onside kicks. That's great. We moved to kick return. We got 1 great kick return. Let's move on to our punt team. Boom. We just go through. And our goal is to be done like an hour 20 or less. I really like to, like I said, piss our defensive guys off by not giving them many reps. We may go over some last-minute scouting things do formation alignments. And then I say, all right, any questions? All right, ones you're off, twos you're on. And then I might give the twos a couple plays, and the ones are like, damn it. And then I just tell them, you got to show me tomorrow night. And if you've taught the techniques correctly, how to block, how to tackle, how to take on blocks, how to read, their keys and such like that, they're going to be ready. And you've done all that work in individual work, and you don't need to do all that stuff on Thursday. They're going to be ready, and they're going to be more fresh, and they're going to want to go after it a little bit more. So kind of a traditional schedule there. And then this is probably where we're different than most. So most of the teams we play, I see them walking on the field with organized special teams and all that stuff an hour 15 before game time, getting their guys freaking tired. So quit getting your guys tired in warm-ups. It's the dumbest thing in the world. So I think when I started coaching track, and I was a first-year track coach like 5 years ago, and we showed up to a meet, well, shit, all of a sudden, guys are getting block starts. Guys are getting relay handoffs. I didn't have to say, hey, get over there and work on your handoffs. Well, we do the same thing. Our guys know the expectations. So when we arrive at a game or we're at home, our skills go out, and on their own, they organize their own warm-up. And so they'll run a route, do whatever the scenarios, our guys will kick. They do that stuff on their own. And then they come back in when they feel good. When our kicker's got enough kicks in, our quarterback feels good, he feels loose, then he comes in. We're setting up all of our tech stuff. So we're not out there going through this rigid, hour and 15 warm-up that by the time we get ready to play, the sweat's drenched, when it's cold, we got all this, whatever going above our head. We don't do that. So we're inside. We're like most teams, like they kind of know now, but when we play teams in the playoffs, they're like, where the hell are these guys? Where the hell are they? Because we don't take the field until there's about 15 or so minutes to go, because inside we've done our RPR, we've done our speed drills, and then when we take the field, we do a quick position kind of CNS prime warm-up. We do a little bit of team offense. We do the national anthem, and we kick off. And that's what we do, because we don't need to do all this stuff. We don't go out there and stand in lines and do all this static stretching and do jumping jacks and all that dumb stuff that has no value, in my opinion, in their ability to perform. And then at halftime, we try to get them something to eat. We try to get them off their feet. And if it's cold, we try to take them inside. And that was something we didn't always do. We kind of bought into that toughness, mental toughness bullshit, where we were going to keep them out in the elements because they're going to be, we figured out that our guys play better in the second half if we've let them get off their feet. We've given them a little time to themselves. We've given them Gatorades, chocolate bars, granola bars, bananas, apples. We've got all that stuff laying out for them, and they can grab whatever they want. If they only want a half a granola bar, they eat a half a granola bar, and they feel better. We tell the guys that haven't played, don't touch the shit. That's not for you. This is for the guys that have actually played. And so here's an example of what practice to game day looks like. So here we are. We're installing a version of a play, an I formation play. We call it down, but we'll run it out of the I. So this is on Tuesday. We're installing it against Bags. So it's the first time I ran it. The next day we're running against Pads. We blocked the wrong guy. So that's why I got my hands up down here. Then we come out and run at the first play of the game, and we get everybody blocked. And our all-stater, who after this game, so this is like week 6, he says, Coach, I've never felt this good in my life. This is a guy who had like 107 carries for 11. He averaged 11 point something a carry. All right. No one else had a chance, and they knew it. And we got after it. We got everyone blocked that we wanted to. It didn't matter that we didn't beat the shit out of each other all week. But that's how we progress that, and we see that each day. And then so our goals on game day, in order to continue to play as fast as possible, even at our level, we play as many guys one way as possible, especially on our O-line, D-line. And we got to get pretty damn creative sometimes. But if you're going to get guys to really buy in and really want to be a part of it at the high school level, you've got to give them a way to do that. And if you're only playing those 11 guys every which way and so forth, you're not building that depth. And you're also, your guys are going to get wore out. Their opportunity for injury is going to increase. And so we try to play as many one guy. And we got some fight back at the beginning because our guys wanted to play both ways. But then as the season progressed, they understood because they were way much fresher at the end of the year, and they had a lot more pop as we continued to go. And we haven't, like Kurt, we haven't had a soft tissue injury in over 2 years. And we played in the state championship game 2 years ago, and we dressed our entire roster and didn't have anyone sitting out. We rotate. We're a 3 running back team, so we rotate running backs every 2-3 plays. So we may run 9 running backs in a night. Does that mean 9 running backs are badasses? Absolutely not. So some years we have 1, some years we have 1.5, some years we have 5. So in those years where we have, 1 or 2, then we got to get really creative with what these other guys can do. So we build in our call sheet. This guy sucks at blocking, but he's fast as shit and he can catch. So when he's in the game, we're going to do fast as shit things and we're going to throw him the ball. We're not going to ask him to block. But we got to get him out. We got to get him in there because this other wing is one of our best outside linebackers. And we don't want him to play the game both sides all game long. And then we try to start the game going fast because we are playing a lot of one-way guys, and I believe we're faster. So like Kurt said, if we can get up 40-0 in the first quarter, which we've been up 32-0 before, that's what we want to do. And we want the other team to be like, shit, man, we can't catch these guys. And that's what we want. And then we can adjust the tempo as necessary. And then we spread the wealth. We're trying to play as many kids as possible. And then either way, like we're not big into stats. So we get our starters out. It pisses our guys off, but there's a lot of times our guys only play a half. We just get them out because if we got the clock running, if we know there's no chance, we're going to get our guys out because I want them to start that recovery process because probably next week's a better opponent. We all have those opponents in there that we know we can beat. And we try to get our guys in and get them out so they can be ready to play when it really counts. So that's all I got. I'm going to stop sharing so I can see any of the comments. Let's see here. We would open practice with a team offensive session on our sprint day. So we got our best effort possible right out of the gate. And then we could do group work after the team to correct or work on what we need from that team period. Use on Wednesdays for Friday game. What would that work within your idea? Would that work? I think whole part whole's good. I think you have to understand volume. I mean, if you're going to start with 10 team offensive plays, bang, 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 and you're an up-tempo team, you better follow that, or 5. You better follow that with the next period. If your next period goes right into, one-on-ones, offensive line versus defensive line, and then you go right into inside run, and then you go right into team session again, then that's going to progressively get worse. So you've got to figure out that high-low and that volume and the reps in there. Anybody else? All right. I'm going to give it up to Dan then.
Awesome. Well, I always enjoy jumping in on these things because I always get to learn a bunch, which I always really appreciate. And I'm sharing, I guess, more from the perspective of someone who, every time I've been to a TFC event and get a chance to present, one of the big issues that I find is that you're talking to, whether it's assistant coaches or coordinators or strength and conditioning or track coaches that are trying to convince football guys the importance of speed-based, basically the whole feed the cats speed-based style. And so me and Brad are fortunate enough that we're the head football coach. So we get to set the tempo, set the pace. I also coach track. I'm not the head track coach. I coach the sprinters, jumpers. But basically we're in a fortunate position where we get to basically say what goes on the football end of things. And since we bought into this, it makes life a little bit easier for us. But I'm more talking to someone who maybe doesn't call the shots, who's trying to basically tell people or get people invested in the merits of why speed should be the highest priority instead of maybe strength and conditioning and some of the other elements that football coaches harp on a lot, or even scheme stuff. So unfortunately, I've done a bunch of these Zoom things and videos never play well. But if you want this, I can send you this clip. It's basically a roundtable discussion about Randy Moss, and at the front of the table is Bill Belichick. And they're talking about when Randy Moss was signed. He spent a couple years with Oakland after his great run with the Vikings. Spent a couple years in Oakland, comes to the Patriots, and Belichick basically says, I've never coached anybody like Randy Moss. He was the smartest receiver I've ever coached. And one of the things that he said is he was talking through scheme stuff. He was talking about run game versus single high safeties. And Randy Moss walks into the meeting room and just says, Coach, you aren't going to see any single high safeties against me. And Bill Belichick kind of sat there and was like, well, sure enough, the whole season, that year they went undefeated, nobody showed a single high look. Nobody put 8 in the box. Nobody was loading up against their run game because Randy Moss existed as a human being, because he's a supreme athlete and maybe one of the greatest receivers of all time. I know people argue about that stuff, but hard to argue with his production, his value, all of those things. And one of the reasons I titled this presentation Perception and Production is I think that there's sometimes with football coaches, there's a difference between how we view players based on production. But I think what you need to remember, especially as an offensive coach, is perception almost is valued almost as high as production in football. The way I've seen it, the way I've seen schemes put together. This is a quote that comes from a British general from World War I believe. And I got it from Chet Richards' book, Certain to Win. I'm going to see if I can find this quote here. And I'm going to read it to you out of the book because sometimes my screen doesn't always show up well. But the whole idea, and he's basically describing what would become the German Blitzkrieg style of warfare that basically shaped all of modern warfare moving forward. But he's describing this idea, like this philosophy, and I'm obviously not advocating Nazi Germany by any means, but it's a style of warfare that I think is interesting. He said it was to employ mobility as a psychological weapon, not to kill, but to move. Not to move to kill, but to move to terrify, to bewilder, to perplex, to cause consternation, doubt, confusion in the rear of the enemy. And I think a lot of football scheme is based on this idea of employing mobility as a psychological weapon. And one of the reasons I think speed is the most important thing in the world for football coaches is because there's nothing that will terrify the defense or the offense for that matter, like speed, and you need to use it to your advantage. And if you're working on convincing a football coach the merits of speed-based, I hate to call it conditioning, but speed-based programming, I think this is a great way to do it. So first of all, let's pick your player. Player A, 5'9", 166 last year. This is an NFL player. 46 catches, a little over 500 yards, 7 touchdowns. Player B, 6'2", 203, 90 catches, over 1,000 yards, 5 touchdowns. Most football coaches, because we're production-based people, we're picking player B. But I would argue that you may want to pick player A, and here's the reason. So player A, Marquise Brown for the Baltimore Ravens, ran a 4.3 in the 40-yard dash. Tyler Boyd, really good football player, is a 4.6 guy. Again, phenomenal football player, but it's not just about production, it's about perception as well. So how does Marquise Brown globally affect the defense, not just in his production with his numbers, but how is he globally affecting the way the defense lines up to the Baltimore Ravens? How does Tyler Boyd, again, great player, he has great production, but how is he globally affecting the way the defense lines up to them? Let's first look at the Cincinnati Bengals. You turn on any game from last year, there is 9, 10 players within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. Why is that? No deep threat, no vertical stretch of the defense. So the Miami Dolphins, also not a good football team, can put 10 in the box against these condensed formations, and they don't have to worry about deep speed. They don't have to worry about someone winning on a fade. They don't have to worry about someone winning on a post. Tyler Boyd, great player. I'm not taking anything away from him, but more of a possession-type receiver. So how do people line up to the Baltimore Ravens? Let's check that out. Turn on any game. You got 3 people 12 yards off the line of scrimmage. Now, here's the interesting thing about all this. Football coaches, when we turn on the film, we see the Baltimore Ravens as essentially a double option team. A lot of read option stuff. Lamar Jackson, phenomenal athlete. But if I was playing against Lamar Jackson, why wouldn't I load up the box with 9 players? Why would I have 3 guys 12 yards off the ball? The reality is because they have one player in the game named Marquise Brown who runs a 4.3 40 and is going to win on a post route if you single him up. So here's the thing. If you look at this formation, the Baltimore Ravens have 2 tight ends and a fullback in the game. If they're basically in 22 personnel with 1 fast guy on the field. And guess what? The Cleveland Browns have 3 players 12 yards off the line of scrimmage because they're scared to death of getting beat deep. And again, Marquise Brown did not have that many catches, 46 catches the whole year. He's 5'9". He's a $165. But he has this global effect on the defense, which allows their running game to operate. All right, let's go to the Chiefs now. We all love the Chiefs, right? They have 4.3 speed all over the field. That means players on the opposing team are playing off the ball, 7 men in the box against 11 personnel with cut split. So basically what that means is if I'm an offensive coach and I'm looking at this picture right now, I'm saying we're running the ball to the boundary all game long. You're not going to be able to stop us. But everybody's so terrified of Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins, Connolly, all these guys that can run. So what does that globally do to the defense? Backs you off the football. So how does speed create chaos when we're game planning. Speed is going to affect the way that the safeties and the corners basically are able to align. And if I'm an offensive coach, I want to be able to run the football against a 7-man box all game long. And you could argue this is a 6-man box because that overhang's a little stretched out. I gave him credit, but people are terrified of speed. So how does speed create chaos? Well, we can see it in the NFL. We can see it all over the place. Let's go ahead and pick your player again. Player A, 6 foot, 190, 40 catches, 700 yards, 7 touchdowns. Player B, they're a little more evenly matched size-wise, 6'1", 192. Again, close to 80 receptions, 1,100 yards, 10 touchdowns. Well, all you had to do was turn on the draft a couple days ago, and you would know that these players are Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy. Henry Ruggs was probably you could argue maybe the number 3 receiver for Alabama in terms of production. But he was the first player off the board. Reason being 4.27 speed. And again, Jeudy is a fast kid too, 4.5 or 4.45. But the reason I think Ruggs came off the board faster was not necessarily from a pure production standpoint, and it's no guarantee that he's going to have a better career from a production standpoint than Jeudy. But I think what you see is the Oakland Raiders valued the global effect that speed would have on the defense, that you're going to have to come out in 2 high safety looks. You're going to have to you're not going to be able to load up the box in the same way that you can, because I think ultimately the Raiders want to run the football. And the best way to run the football is to be able to stretch the defense vertically in the pass game as well. Again, there's this back and forth. If you have speed in the pass game, you're able to do some things in the run game that you maybe otherwise couldn't do. So one of the things that I've taken a lot from I know a lot of people have heard of the OODA loop, but I really got this from Eric Corum at the last TFC when we got a chance to talk about it a little bit more. And I think this really applies to coaches when they're going in, maybe on a macro level of looking at a drive. They're observing what's going on. They're trying to orient themselves, make decisions, and ultimately act. And so say you have a 4 to 6 play drive. The way to create chaos in the midst of like kind of a macro drive is to play with tempo. So you play faster speed. You can shift, you can get into formations, you can do all these different things. But more than anything, the best way to stress a defensive coach from an offensive perspective is to put players on the field that can win vertically and make them either play a safety over the top or do some different things that is going to basically create chaos in the rest of their game plan. But on a micro level, you have players, and I shorten this loop for players, and I talked to Andy Ryland over at USA Football a lot about this, of vision, decision, action. So on the macro level, you have coaches who are trying to observe, orient, decide, and act. And then in the micro level, in those 4 to 6 seconds, you have players that are trying to see with their eyes, make decisions, and ultimately act in that short amount of time. So what does speed allow you to do in those 2 loops? You have the OODA loop, and then you have the VDA, vision, decision, action. Well, what it does is when you have the speed advantage, if you're a defensive player, you are increasing your processing time. So if I'm a physically faster human being, I can read longer and react later because I can have a delayed burst. And that's why I think if you're trying to convince your head football coach at your school the merits of speed-based programming, this is one of the biggest things, is because you're basically telling that coach who cares a ton about scheme, who cares a ton about technique, you're basically telling him, if we have the speed advantage, if we invest all of our resources in speed, we are going to increase our processing time. So all those blitzes you want to put in, we have more time to comprehend them during the play, and we can make a delayed burst. So maybe because we have the speed advantage, instead of trying to fit power where we joint in the fullback and we try to force him inside, maybe we can spill the fullback, run over the top, and tackle him for a 1-yard gain because we have the speed advantage. And so basically, if you're an offensive or if you're a defensive coach, you want that speed advantage because it increases the processing time. It gives your players more time to read. And for example, if you have the speed advantage at a cornerback position, then you can play press coverage and you have some recovery speed. So you're not worried about putting that guy out on an island in the same way that you might be if you knew as soon as this guy gets shook off the line, he's gone, it's over. We can't play press man. We can't play cover 1. We certainly can't play cover 0. We have to play a too high safety look and make sure nothing gets behind us, because the worst thing in the world for a defensive coach is something getting behind you. And then on the offensive side of things, if you have the speed advantage, you're decreasing the processing time of the defense. So like a lot of times when we talk to receivers, we talk about getting on the defensive back's toes. We want to get on his toes. We want to press him early. But what you're doing in that is that you're decreasing his ability to process. So you're shortening his vision and decision time period where he has to move into action quicker. And we want that. We don't want them to be able to process what we're doing because, like Tony talks about, there's a lot of deception involved in football. We want to increase the rate at which they have to process. And then another thing that's a huge advantage from an offensive perspective is this idea of the delayed burst. I think it affects defense, but I think it affects offense even more. And one of the things Deshaun Jackson talks about a lot, the great receiver for the Philadelphia Eagles, played a couple of different spots, is he says that when he runs a post route, again, maybe the best post runner in NFL history, one of the best, he says he runs 70%, and when he breaks on the post, that's when he kicks it into gear and hits 100. And that's the way he's able to create separation because he has the speed reserve. So his 70% is still going to press the toes of the defensive back, and it's still going to speed up the processing. And then once he kicks it into gear, it's over, game over. He's gonna win. So, one of the things that we talk about a lot with what we do at St. David's is the idea of marginal gains. And I think all football coaches would agree that, you're going to progress slowly. There's no magic bullet. Whatever you decide you're going to go in on, it's going to take time, and you're going to have to work at it and chip away at it slowly. And one of the reasons I put a picture up of Indiana is I think their strength staff the past few years did a really amazing job with some of these guys. And I think they're very much in line with a lot of what TFC crowd has been talking about, of being efficient with your work. And I know it sounds silly to say being wasteful with your rest, but that's something we believe in. Like, if we are able to practice in 90 minutes, that means the rest of the time you're able to rest. And ultimately it creates a sense of responsibility where we are giving you an opportunity in a short amount of time to have maximum intent. And then the way that you decide that you're going to invest in your rest, that gives you a ton of responsibility. And I think a lot of coaches, when we send kids home over the summer or different things like that, we give them so much to do that if they can't keep up with it, they can it altogether. And they just lose sight of it completely. But if we give them really small, specific, targeted things like, hey, I want you to run 3 fly 10s today. And then whatever you decide to do on top of that is bonus. But that's the thing you got to get done today. You're ensuring that you're going to get high intent on those 3 reps. And then whatever you get on top is a bonus. Sometimes when we give them a full menu to eat, give them the full buffet, they're going to pick and choose the things they like, but they're not going to give good intent. It's going to be kind of a waste. One of the things that I talk about all the time, especially with strength guys, is you get what you emphasize. If you want 500-pound squatters, you can fill a weight room with 500-pound squatters because you're going to put all your eggs in that basket. But if you tell kids, I want a bunch of 1.5 10-meter flies, that's going to create a culture in your program where kids are striving for that. And I think the great thing about Feed the Cats is that you end up getting 500-pound squatters. I have a kid who dropped a 101 10-meter fly a couple weeks ago, and then he just sent me a video of him back squatting 415 no problem, and he's like 5'9", 170. And so you're seeing kids really buy in because they say, I'm not losing in the strength department because I'm gaining in the speed department. I think Kurt hit the nail on the head that sprinting is strength work, and we believe that. And then also, the final thing I'll say before I jump off is I believe each coach has a role in the idea of what it looks like to be strong enough. And I talked with Keir Wyndham Flatt up at William & Mary about this too. And the reality is it's hard to find a high school kid that's strong enough. So getting stronger isn't going to be detrimental to them. But I think what you want to remember is don't sacrifice speed in order to be strong enough. Build that slowly and embrace those marginal gains over time. That kid's going to grow. And then ultimately, when we talk about strong enough, we're talking about, are you strong enough within the scheme that I've constructed? So I am responsible as a coach for the scheme that I've constructed. And if I'm telling a player he's not strong enough for my scheme, again, that may or may not be true, but what am I doing as a coach to orient the way that I call plays and the way that we run our program to really enhance the abilities of the players that I do have? So if I'm a speed-based coach, I have to design speed-based schemes. And I think that's something that we have to remember, that if we have a certain emphasis, that there has to be alignment with the whole program. We can't just say, hey, we're all speed, but then come Friday night, I'm mad at you for not, for my fullback not blowing somebody up on third down. we need to make sure our schemes are in line with how we've run the rest of our program. And so I think that just having that alignment is really important. It's easy to do when you're the head coach and you get to be in charge of a lot of things. But if you're maybe on a lower level and you're trying to convince a coach of the importance of these things, show what speed-based stuff can do to open the door, Pandora's box. When people are playing off you, like you see in these pictures, your scheme possibilities are endless. So speed opens the door for scheme, but just as a coach, make sure you're investing in schemes that are going to benefit the players that you have on your roster.
All right. Any specific questions for Dan? That was really good, Dan.
Engineering projects. All that heavy equipment is great for moving gravel, but it makes this shit tricky to steer.
Anybody? Any other questions from anybody else? Any of the other coaches? Tony, anybody want anything to say? Any last comments?
No, we're good. And if anybody wants any clarifications, we're pretty easy to get a hold of.
All right, thanks, guys. If you liked it and you're interested in us doing something a little bit bigger, let us know, I guess, on social media. I will try to get this recording out. I've never done that before, but I'll do my best on getting that out. And hope all you guys stay safe. And I'm sure we'll be seeing you on these coming down the line. So thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks, Brad. Appreciate it.